Matt Lenihan Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store. Been joined by Gareth A. Davies. Gareth, appreciate you jumping on. A fair bit to discuss actually. An interesting weekend. A terrific T-shirt. Mayweather Pacquiao week.
You were there with your father?
I was there with my girlfriend for that one.
Oh, sorry, it's a slightly different.
That was a different fight week, but yeah, indeed, I was there. Jesus, what a fight week!
Are we talking 10 years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad I've pulled this T-shirt out because I've never really worn it. So pulled it out. Been swimming this morning, but what a week that was! Hey, what a week that was!
Yeah, as a fan experience, that was mental. Like,
as a journalistic experience, it was extraordinary because you had Floyd Mayweather with Bob Arum, who'd promoted him, and then you had those guys back together again and kind of talking around each other. And just for that promotion, obviously they don't talk.
Yeah.
But people forget that Bob helped to build Floyd. You know, they really do forget that. And Oscar, by the way.
A huge part of his career was Bob Arum, and then obviously he made the breakaway and backed himself.
And he really became himself, and that's when he really made the mega bucks. And he shifted the paradigm, you know, in many ways for a lot of boxers who became self-promoted.
I think he changed boxing in terms of the business as well. There's a lot of reasons these fighters, especially I would say the American side of it, we're making so much money when you look at the young fighters who came just after him. But not just that as well. This is kind of his fault as well because he marketed himself on being this undefeated fighter, 50-0, and that was his thing. But the problem is, like, he was just elite, and he was that level. Whereas fighters, I think it put pressure on them to sort of go, well, let me maybe see how we can build this record and stay undefeated. And I think it did change boxing a little bit. I don't know if you agree because of his persona and how he marketed himself.
Well, that changed it, and obviously went from Pretty Boy and Lil Floyd to Money, which became his moniker. And I think he also changed it in terms of less is more. He went away, he retired 3 times, and he came back, and he saw the gaps in the market, and very, very shrewd, but the right guy in the right place at the right time, and also. I remember going probably for 5 years or 6 years, might even been 7, 27 floors of the MGM Grand were just him on the outside of the MGM Grand because that was his home. I probably covered 12 to 15 of his fights there, and Manny Pacquiao was fighting there at the time as well, and sometimes Mandalay Bay. I mean, that was an amazing time to be covering those two in America, and obviously they came together in 2014, and it's amazing to think 10 years later Floyd's still fighting every now and again. He can still command 10 million to turn up or 5 million to turn up in Japan and beat up someone who's like a stone and a half lighter than him, you know.
Yeah, he's found a way to sort of scratch that itch but do it in a safe manner and still pick up a lot of money. And I think that's what all fighters sort of look at and go, what they're going to do after boxing, whereas Floyd can still get a little bit of that limelight, pick up a bag of money, and then sort of drift off and do what he wants. It's ideal.
I don't know how happy he is, Matt. I sometimes get a sense he's not that happy and maybe quite alone in a way. I don't know. I haven't interviewed him for. I mean, well, I saw him last year actually in London. I had a very brief interview with him, but I think maybe that's the way they do his Instagram. He's always there on his own in a private jet with 5 Hermes bags or whatever I don't know what bags they are, Louis Vuitton or whoever it is. But I tell you what, that paradigm shift is self-evident in people like Devin Haney becoming promoters themselves at 20. Yeah. Just I'm kind of seeding for the future, putting that treasure chest there ready for the future so that when they are big enough, they can promote themselves. Yeah, I know he's a fascinating character. I don't think I know him any better now than I did 25 years ago, but I have been to a couple of projects for his, and I will say this about Floyd. I know that when he was incarcerated at Clark County Jail for 68 days or whatever it was, I know that, and I'll say this, Kelly Swanson, who I've known many years, who obviously is a dyed-in-the-wool amazing PR agent, and obviously Swanson Communication, she was brilliant for him. I do remember her telling me, I don't think I've ever revealed this before, that he wrote letters to lots of people when he was in when he was incarcerated, and thanking people for things, and letters to his family. And I think that's a really lovely thing, because he probably got a lot of letters at the time. Maybe he didn't have his phone. And one day, and I know he used to put bets on that were more than this, as Conor McGregor did at the weekend and lost his bet on Renan Ferreira, who I thought was going to win as well, by the way. So I'm really pleased for the big fella, Francis Ngannou. Was that, and Conor put $500,000 on it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Turn of 1.2 million, I think it was. I think he won first round knockout, but it didn't surprise me that he went for that. He used to do these projects in Vegas, and I turned up to one day, Floyd, and he's there with his workman's belt on, and giving away 150 grand to 3 families each, to help them build their homes.
Yeah.
And that was really nice, and that was, I saw a different side of him that day.
One thing about him, just before we move on to the weekend's performance, we could talk about Floyd.
We're not talking about the weekend. We're talking about Floyd today, I thought.
Yeah, well, we can do for me.
I put my T-shirt on.
Yeah, listen, I got into boxing watching him. We can talk about him till the cows come on. But he was doing a lot of the feeding of the homeless in Las Vegas for years before it was even publicised. And he often came out and said, "Look, I'm not even doing this to be publicised. I've been doing this for years anyway." Like, you see a lot of it now. There's cameras there, and he's been doing that. I think it got publicised for the first time, I think, maybe on the big stage. I think it was the Marquez fight, when they did the All Access, or it might even have been 24/7 HBO, where they show him actually doing it. But they've been doing that for a long time, and that'll always go maybe
turkey giveaways. They do the turkey giveawaways.
Yeah, the drives over there. We'll just give back to school.
But boxers, I think boxers do give back, and they don't always get praise. So, I mean, it was lovely to hear Kevin Mitchell talking the other day about Anthony Joshua paying for his brothers, for Vinny's funeral, and that would have been a few £1,000s, but which is not a lot of money to Anthony Joshua. But the very fact that he rang him up and gestured in that way and said, "Can I speak to your mum?" and shows amazing heart, amazing love and empathy that exists inside Anthony Joshua. And you do, it's a beautiful thing that he's feeling what Kevin's feeling about losing his brother. I think it's a big gold star for Anthony Joshua when you hear about that, and the fact that he didn't tell anyone about it, and he did it very silently, because that is what a good Samaritan or a good person is like. They don't want other people to know their good deeds. It just comes out eventually.
I'm just about to say that the most important thing about that story, as much as it's a nice gesture, is the fact that that's happened. That's happened, kind of thing. It didn't happen last week.
It's a couple. It's 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
2 or 3 years ago, and it's gone under the radar. There was no big, hoopla about it, and it's took Kevin to come out and say Anthony's never mentioned it, and that's a nice thing. I think that's a really good thing that it's happened like that.
Yeah, it's good. It just shows that that's a man who isn't looking for praise for good things that he does, and I think that's a great human being myself. And I did do a piece a while back, and I did publicise it. It was in the Telegraph on the front page of Sport one day, when I think we came back from lockdown, or still in lockdown, and Anthony Joshua was fighting Kubrat Pulev. And I found out that Anthony was employing a community officer to do things in the community, and that full-time paid-up community officer. Fantastic. Brilliant. Fantastic. That's giving back. Yeah. That's giving back, because we return to our roots as we get older. You do as you go, and to do that as a young man in his 30s, phenomenal.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. It's a good sidebar to the actual boxing, that it tells a good narrative to these people. I think that's the most important thing as well. We may as well start with AJ, just because. So we just touched on him there, but we're coming up to a point now where there's a lot of talk about this rematch with Daniel Dubois, but also we're getting ever closer to Usyk Fury. There's so many different things that he could do. The feeling was, I think, about a week and a half ago, that Anthony Joshua would probably seek this rematch. But the longer this sort of goes on, you're sort of thinking, is he going to wait for the main event in December? I know people think that's wise. I suppose the champion in him maybe want the rematch straight away. What's your feeling, and what are you hearing about what potentially could be next for him?
Well, I've been involved in several conversations about this with prominent people in the boxing industry, with Derek Chisora, with Eddie Hearn, quite publicly. That my view is, and in fact, just before we came on today, I was just having a read through the aggregator on boxing, and Daniel Dubois is saying at the moment that Anthony Joshua's feeling the scar tissue from that first fight. There's no question about it. He will be. He might have PTSD. I don't know if he uses that expression, but I just was reading that just before we came on to speak to each other. And I was thinking, I wonder if he is or not, because he seemed quite cured of it straight away. Like, nah, I had a bad night. Happy to do it again. But my feeling, and I'm being quite public about this, is play the long game, play the safer route, fight Deontay Wilder next and Dillian White. With all respect, due respect to those two men as well. But do that, then fight Tyson Fury. And if that works out, do that twice and then go back to Daniel Dubois. Or then fight Usyk. There's about 6 fights out there I see for Anthony Joshua. And in my view, going straight back into the Daniel Dubois fight is probably what he will do. Certainly that's what they're teasing at the moment. We haven't had an announcement that it's signed. I'm not hearing rumours that it's absolutely and definitely signed, which sometimes His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh gets them to do at the end of a big event. Eddie was out there. I see Eddie was out there Saturday night as well at the PFL.
Yeah, I think he was there for the there was tennis on as well.
Of course he was. No, he wasn't. He was there for Turki Al-Sheikh. He wasn't there for tennis.
Oh no, I know he was there. But he was.
Oh, no, I don't normally see him sit with Andy Murray at Wimbledon. He's out there to do business.
Yeah.
But good for him. And if he's a tennis fan, I could see Eddie playing tennis. Anyone for tennis? Anyone for tennis? I'd smash him at tennis, by the way. Do you know that?
Yeah. You can play, can you?
Well, like I smashed you when he batted against me, when I ripped in a couple of overs at him at the Holiday Inn in lockdown when we played cricket in the back of the Holiday Inn. You're going to play any shots today, Eddie? Forward defensive, backward defensive, forward defensive. Tried to claim the other day, hit me through the covers for a couple of fours. You know,
he can talk.
He can talk. So can I, by the sound of it here this morning as well. I've been swimming, so I'm awake. No, I think Eddie says, and the reason I mention Eddie's saying, no, let's go for it. Derek's saying, let's go for it. I think it's a big roll of the dice. If he wins, which he could do, he's fully capable of, if he pulls the trigger early enough and makes the impact of Daniel Dubois, he's perfectly capable of knocking out of Daniel Dubois. But it's a risky fight. But they might say the same. Well, so what? He's lost twice to Daniel Dubois. He can still fight Tyson Fury. So if that fight's being offered and being pushed by His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, and he's going to be paid well for it, he'll take it. But the other route, I think that's a route to 5 or 6 fights and 150 million, in my view.
Do you think the likes of a Joseph Parker should be on the table for him as well? Joe Parker, obviously coming off the back of 2 good wins, he's still there going, you know, I want an opponent kind of thing. And Joe looks a different fighter the past few fights under Andy Lee, and he looks to be growing as well in confidence. Is that the right? Is that an ideal fight for Anthony Joshua? It's a rematch from a narrative, or
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the Dubois rematch is a bigger fight than Joseph Parker. I think Wilder, and I think, as I say, I mean, if you want to go, that doesn't sell out Wembley Stadium, does it? You know?
No. Does Wilder even now sell out Wembley with Joshua though? Now you've seen Wilder in the past.
What would you? I mean, I know what you mean. I'd rather see him against Parker. It's a better fight.
I think for narrative and the history, obviously Joshua Wilder's always going to be like, it's interesting, but then I think it's a difficult one. It's really difficult because if you look at the Wilder in the past couple of fights, you'd still probably favour Anthony Joshua just going off what he's done in the past, maybe 3, even though he lost to Dubois.
Oh, big favourite. Big favourite, Matthew. Big favourite.
But then after the Dubois fight, does that then change your mind and maybe lean you towards, oh, well, if Wilder can bring it on himself to land, you know, it opens a lot of doors, doesn't it?
It's a promoter's hat. I'm talking about that
Yes.
fight potentially happening. I'm not talking about a fans fight. Him in the rematch of Parker is a very good fight. Parker needs a good opponent. There's no question about it. But I like the Parker Zhang rematch. I know Zhang is going to fight Bakoli next, which is potentially a thriller as well. So
that's a banger.
Look, the heavyweight division is really interesting at the moment, and see the point is if he's going to fight in February, and that's going to be the main event on the 5v5 Matchroom versus Queensberry, Hearn versus Warren card, which is a really good main event.
Boss.
They need to announce it before Fury and Usyk fight, because they need to announce it, get into camp. They can't wait for that fight. See what the outcome is. So I think we probably will get that fight, but they're probably deciding right now whether they sign it or not. It may be signed already. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we'll find out more over the coming days, especially with
Wednesday probably. I would
Wednesday.
Think with a few whispers on it.
Yeah.
Hint.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, there's been, in terms of the heavyweights as well, we mentioned there, Fabio Wardley's now announced himself in, well, I think he was already near enough there, but that statement victory. What did you make of all that saga last week with the whole glove scenario? I mean, Frank Warren made his point, like, unbelievably clear after the comments made by Ben Shalom, but just your take from the outside looking in on that. Surprised? I mean, we know the rigorous checks, you know, fighters go through in terms of gloves, but you know, comments made. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, my take is I was involved in it journalistically last week. That I spoke to Frank Warren, I spoke to Ben Shalom, I spoke to the Boxing Board of Control. I know that the glove manufacturers are very unhappy and have, I think, sent out some kind of legal letter to say, look, you're talking about our gloves here, and we're not in the business of killing people with a glove or deliberately harming people with. And let me rephrase that. We're not in the business of our gloves being beyond the bounds of the legality of gloves that go into a ring and that get signed off. I think Ben stepped into a hornet's nest. I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was inadvertent, but I think he could have moved quicker to clarify it. I got him to clarify it on TalkSport on
I've seen that.
Friday, I think. Having spoken, Frank Warren was on earlier in the day and was very, very incensed by it. I think it was Thursday. I think it was Friday. Friday was the way.
Friday, I think, yeah.
It was, yeah. And I think he should have moved quicker to quash that he wasn't trying to accuse glove manufacturers or the boxer himself or the promoter of any ill doing with their gloves. I spoke to Robert Smith, who was actually in Australia, who told me that he was at the rules meeting, the glove meeting, that Shalom wasn't there, but his representative was there. They were happy with the gloves. They were signed off. There was no issue with them. And then Ben explained that, and I'm telling you the facts here, that he was just passing on information that had been passed on to him by his team. He shouldn't have spoken about it. He should have left it under the covers and let it. If it was going to be investigated, which it isn't, then it could have gone on behind the scenes. I think it was an error of judgment. That's what I would call it. And my thing, Tim, was, can you clarify it for us now here live on TalkSport, just so that we know where we stand with this? Is there an investigation? Are you putting in a report seeking any kind of investigation into the gloves? Was there any wrongdoing? And he said, no, there's none. All I'm doing is passing on information that was passed to me.
Do you think maybe, just the last one on this, because...
concerns was the word.
Yeah. But do you think, I was just about to say, do you think because of maybe everything that's going on between... You can clearly see now, there used to be a divide between Hearn and Warren. New kid Ben comes on the scene. sick kid. He's 30 years of age, and he's done a lot of good things in a short space of time in
Absolutely.
boxing. I think we've got to say that, from first all-female card to everything played out with Saudi.
And a deal with Riyadh Season now, by the way, Matt. And a deal with Riyadh Season.
Yeah.
Announced last Friday evening as well.
Exactly. So
which is great for the Eubank fights, the Boazzi Yarde fights, all these other, the investment. Sorry to interrupt you. The investment will be there, and that these fights can get made.
Yeah. My point was, because of the way, obviously, Hearn and Warren are now getting on extremely well.
Yeah. Cooperating.
Yeah, and they've been around the game maybe a bit longer. You think them comments were maybe made off? This isn't me giving him an excuse here. Maybe a bit of pressure. He feels like he's maybe under attack a little bit, and they were a result of that. And he's like, well, maybe I'll just throw this out there, kind of thing. Or was it just a stumbling block?
As I said, I think it was an error of judgment. I don't think he realised, because it's heinous talking about gloves that might have any semblance of illegality about them is a heinous thing in boxing, because it's the weapon, isn't it? So, and as we know, with stories in the past, with the Panamas of the world, with the Margaritos of the world, there's this thing about stacked gloves. So it doesn't fit well in the ill-fated history of boxing. So I think it was an error of judgment in terms of doing the interview, and I can't remember who the interview was with, in all honesty, but pushing it out there and then it being amplified under the oxygen of publicity of digital era probably made it more than it was. I think there's obviously, as you say, the rivalry is very strong at the moment. Hearn and the entente cordiale between Hearn and Warren is proving very profitable for them in terms of events, and I imagine profit itself, a great relationship with the Saudi Arabians, and Ben perhaps muscling in on stage the other day put Frank's nose out of joint, and behind Chris Eubank, and there's a rivalry going on there, and he is the new kid on the block. And as I said to him this week, you're going to look back on this and go, oh, this was my proving ground. This just toughened me up a little bit, because a lot of people would back Frank in the ring against Ben at the moment. The way, Frank's a tough man, and one we all respect deeply, because he is brilliant at what he does. I've known him a long time, and I've known him through thin and thinner, and through survival, and both in the industry, in his life, know all his children, and things he's done, like creating scholarships for kids to go to private schools. People don't know about that. The charity work Frank does, the Nordhoff Robbins dinners that he puts together, fight dinners, where they raise £400,000. I've been compere at some of those dinners, recorded them for the Telegraph in the past. The man is like, he is a proper British gentleman. He's a tough old promoter, and he's got his wily ways, and he's an old fox in many ways, but if you're in the industry, you can't but admire him. So, and he's putting his boot into. Ben should enjoy this time. This is his blooding. He has done very well, and he should almost relish the fact that he's got a rivalry with these guys, that they actually consider him, because he's in a position for them to consider him. That if someone's having a go at you, it's because they care about what position you've got, and that you could be a threat in the future, or they. I'm not saying this is how Frank feels about Ben, or how Eddie feels about Ben, but when people have a go at you and you're in the same industry together, it's because they're looking at your position. It's because you matter. And obviously he's got the Sky deal, the Boxer deal. He's got this Riyadh Season deal now, where they're sponsoring him. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, he's got, I think, the Peacock deal, I think, in America as well, which is good for them as well.
I don't even know who they are, if I'm honest.
Right. Well, it's a pretty big network in a sense. But aside from that, the weekend.
What was Peacock previously known as?
I don't know. I've just always known it as Peacock, but I knew they put together that deal so that the fights can be shown in the States sort of early. I can't remember if it was back end of last year when that got put together, but just sort of looking at the fight at the weekend, obviously Azim and O'Hara, obviously Louis Edmondson as well become British champion. Let's just talk about Azim and Davies for a minute. I think it was I think a career best performance from Azim. I thought his punch selection, he looked like a seasoned fighter in there. He didn't really rush any of his work. I know he's familiar with O'Hara, so maybe that element of surprise maybe wasn't there as it would be with maybe another fighter, but I thought it was a very well-rounded performance, and obviously O'Hara said so the same. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd add there, which you didn't mention, which was control of range as well, which was fantastic. His composure was brilliant. Easily his best career performance for me against a guy who's been in with world-class operators like Ismael Barroso, obviously only for a round, and has only lost to elite fighters in Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor. So I was very pleased with how pleasantly pleased. I was doing the broadcast for Talk Sports, so we were watching it very intently. Just composure, balance, punch selection, rarely got caught. And O'Hara Davies was definitely looking to hurt him with a big right hand, no question about it. And he was game for eighth round, but he was game for 6-7 rounds, very game. He was treated him respectfully, fought him respectfully, very fine performance. And he's going to need that against the likes of Dalton Smith and other guys in that division. Obviously, Dalton is probably, well, you could argue he's the number one in the 10-stone division in the UK at the moment. I did this the other day. Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor in that division as well. So what I mean in terms of prospects coming up.
Yes.
So because I'm not saying that Dalton Smith couldn't give Jack Catterall or Josh Taylor a fight, by the way, but Adam Azim is not ready for them. I do hope those two get in the ring in the next year. I think it would be a great crossroads fight for both of them. But when you look at the division, and this is the division we're talking about. Devin Haney, we're talking about. I've got it here somewhere because I was looking at it just before we came on. Devin Haney, Valenzuela, Teo Lopez, Liam Paro.
It's a great division.
It's a great division.
Banging division.
But then Matt, you can almost add into that division Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia.
Yeah.
There's more. You can add. Those guys are good enough to be 10-stone fighters. So it's a great divition.
O'Hara Davies.
On the others, I didn't think Edmondson beat Dan Aziz. I didn't agree with the decision. It was a fight, as I said on air at the time, that seemed to go on for 3 or 4 days.
It was a hard fight to score.
It was a very hard fight to score. I scored it for Dan Aziz by 2 rounds.
I wouldn't disagree. I think I actually had it to Lewie, and I think people give a bit of stick. Actually, I had it like the same as one of them judges had it. I think that's just maybe for what I was scoring, but I'll do is also them rounds where I was like, I've got a couple of stars next to it for potential giveaway. So it's one of them.
Listen, taking nothing away from Lewie.
No.
All's guts. He controlled a really dangerous fighter who's on you all the time. He's very versatile. He's 6'2.5" or whatever he is.
Yeah, he's a good guy Lewie as well.
He's a fantastic. It was lovely to be. I didn't really have a proper chat to him around fight week. I was there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and just said hello. No, he's a great character. And congratulations to him, by the way. But it was just a hard fight to watch after a long night covering the boxing, to be honest.
Yeah. And they put it on, like I said, after the main event as well. So it's sort of it was a strange balance, but I know why they did. I know why they did that, obviously. But
and you asked me about Anthony Yarde as well, or you said about
I was just going to touch on O'Hara, obviously. Do you think this is it? I know he's called it a day. Someone was in Monday and was back. He's been around the scene a long time. He's knocked it on the head. He said, look, that's me done. I'm out, retiring. What do you make of it?
Well, he took a bad one through it for a couple more rounds. He'd announced he was going to have his last fight anyway, I think. And I think he's had enough. It's a shame because I wanted him to stay around in the sport because as I described him all week, he's like a Derek Chisora for the 10-stone division. He's like a cult figure, And when you listen to him last week, I thought he was winding us up all week. Like, he didn't turn up at the workouts, and whenever he spoke, he was really interesting. And he was saying, "I don't really care. I'm just going to go in there and do what I need to do." And then there was that relationship that he'd been like the elder brother in the Peacock gym when they were both training there. He and Adam Azim. So very interesting character, O'Hara Davies, and I hope he's someone that stays around the scene, because I think he's one of those guys, and I mean this fully respectfully, that we just need to look after a little bit and just make the most of, and keep him involved in the boxing world. He says he doesn't watch boxing, but he's definitely got something to give.
Yeah, 100%. To these young fighters coming through, he's seen the ups, downs, the promotional changes, the works. Go on, let's touch on Anthony Yarde. I think the worst thing that happened to him, and I think he said it himself, was the knockdown in the first. Because I think as soon as you think that in 10 seconds, you think this guy's gone within the next round or two. But he turned out to be a tough competitor, and it almost woke him up to start. And Anthony didn't look his usual self, been out the ring a while. But what did you make of the performance, sort of, as we're wanting to see this Buatsi fight?
I was very disappointed. Not in the first 5 milliseconds of the fight, because obviously that right hand landed and popped Ralph Wilkins over. But I think what happened then, I think Anthony settled into a rhythm. We thought, I want a few rounds here. I don't want a 1-round blowout. And I think he settled in, got too comfortable, and it became like a little bit of a touchy-feely sparring session for 2 or 3 rounds. And Wilkins got his mettle in the fight and really started to enjoy himself. And then as it went on, he got more and more confident, and the 6 inches between here and here was glowing, and he became a harder opponent for Anthony Yarde to put away. I think if you'd said to Anthony Yarde, go in there and just destroy him, it wouldn't have lasted 2 rounds. So I saw Anthony Yarde, a little clip of him talking to Wilkins afterwards, and he said, you threw me there because you went down early and then you came back really strong. So praise to Wilkins. Maybe a little bit of a shock result in many ways, or shock performance, in that he didn't look sharp against Wilkins, and he couldn't land the big shots. And on the basis of that, on basis of last performance, you make Buatsi a strong favourite when they do meet. But it's going to be a great fight, whatever. It's going to be a great fight.
Last one from me, it's Catterall Prograis fight, where you had the pleasure of speaking to both of them in the build-up to this. Both super respectful guys. Regis been there, done it before. This is really him. He's got a big point to prove, to say, look, I'm still at that level, and there's Catterall riding this wave now off the back of a Taylor victory. Just quickly, how much are you looking forward to this fight this week?
Very much so. I think you said it there, which is like a hint on what really probably will happen in this event. That Regis seen it, done it, been there before. Jack Catterall, he's beaten an undisputed. He beat the guy when he was undisputed, even though he didn't get the decision. And I feel he beat him, but obviously on paper he hasn't.
Yeah.
And I think Jack Catterall will have enough. 2 southpaws. It's going to be a very cagey contest early on. I think Jack will win this on points. It might be quite close, but I've got him. I think he'll win it on 7-5 or around about 7-5. Just see him pepping Regis Prograis, who has, like you say, been there, done it. Probably starting to tire in his career.
It'll be interesting. He's when I spoke to him this week, very calm in his work, says I'm learning to enjoy it. But he also says that ambition there to become a world champion is still there, which is very good to hear, because you don't like to hear people, oh yeah, I've been there, done it, and he's motivated. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be.
I'm trying to think someone else. Jack Catterall has beaten Josh Taylor.
O'Hara Davies.
I just think
Linares, but
Linares. I mean, you look at who. I mean, obviously an old Linares, but I just think that I hope Jack Catterall wins this and he gets a world title shot. I mean, again, Jack Catterall, how does he fare against Devin Haney? How does he fare? He's champion in recess. How does he fare against? I was just looking at it. How does he fare against?
I think he is a nightmare for a lot of fighters because
Lopez on a bad day. Liam Paro.
Let's see it. I want to chuck him in. I'd say chuck him as soon if he does get past Prograis. It has to be one of them names.
Does Eddie promote Liam Paro?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, I can see that from Jack's number 3 with the IBF as well. So my feeling is he deserves a shot at the IBF if he beats Regis.
Yeah.
Who, you know, is 7 with 3 of the sanctioning bodies and 12. He's 12 with the WBC and 7 with the 3 others. So, you know, in a sense, this is his chance to prove himself, you know. We've only got 1 minute 47 left on the Zoom. Can I just say something?
Go for it.
I was a bit worried about Murtazaliyev's assault on Tim Tszyu at the weekend. He got badly beaten up. Obviously, he lost to Sebastian Fundora before that, was it?
He did, yeah, in a brutal fight as well.
Exactly. I'm a little bit concerned about how much punishment Tim Tszyu's taking. We know what his dad was like, Kostya. Obviously, I covered part of his career. I just think there's an element of wondering how much has he got left. I mean, it's brutal. Did you? I don't know if you've seen the clip.
I did. I
haven't seen the whole fight. It was only 3 rounds, but
I watched it, and I was speaking to Tim in the build up to this, and I was quite confident. But this other guy, because maybe he's not an name, people maybe overlooked him. I don't think Tim did. I think he got caught, and then after that, sadly it was curtains. But a bit of a rebuild maybe, but yeah, he took a lot of punishment. That'll have to change. Can't keep fighting.
And the big men, even though it was an MMA event, Francis Ngannou won the Super Champions against. Really pleased for him. Didn't pick, as we said on the top of the show.
Couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, and he looked really rounded as well. His whole game looked good, you know.
I love
really pleased for him. Really pleased for him. Yeah.
Gareth, it's been a pleasure. I'll catch up later on this week. And yeah, cheers for jumping on.